one she has is the one for the Wednesday COVID meeting.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll wait just a minute for her if you want.
Mike Biddle, can you maybe text Deanna and tell her to check her emails? Because she's still texting me, but I can't respond.
Okay, we're still waiting for Deanna, but let's get going. I want to start out with an announcement. The announcement is that we have made all our metric numbers with our regional contact tracing, and we are green lit to begin phase 1 opening tomorrow, Wednesday morning. So we are open for business essentially. Now, this is one of the first meetings that I've ever run that I did not produce an agenda for because I'm not precisely sure yet what our agenda should be. We have, Chairman got direction from the governor to set up a reorganization, a reopening meeting, or reopening group. And so we did, but we've never had a charge as to what we should do. A lot of the stuff that some of the other counties had done were done by this Capital Region Control Group. I've been sending you the stuff, the reopening plans and things that essentially are pretty complete and pretty much what we require. And there's a whole lot of stuff for the individual businesses and things on the website. So I think that what our primary function is going to be is dealing with Washington County exceptions, dealing with things that people don't get answers for on the state level, and kind of helping people out. To that end, let me talk about a couple of things here that have come up, quite recently and prominently. And then I think, even though this is a horrible forum for it, I really think what we're doing today is kind of brainstorming. That we need to do, is there services we have to provide? Is there stuff that we should be handling that we are not? And I think those ideas should be coming in from you, not being generated by me. So let me talk about a couple of the significant things that have come up, some that have answers and some that don't, through this regional control group. First has to do with two biggies that are kind of significant for us in this county as well. One has to do with camping, campsites, and trailer camping and trailer parks and this sort of thing. and graduation. And we have asked that question each time, both those things, can we do them under certain parameters and things, and to date, as of yesterday, we did not have an answer yet from the second floor. So if those are going to be a couple of your questions, I don't have an answer yet, and hopefully we will have sometime. One thing that we should try to avoid, and all the counties are trying to avoid it, is giving out third-party opinions. Really, the ones in control of this are not the county, it's the state. It's the state executive direction. And while some of the nasty, messy things like, is it okay to have a parade, I think they'd be perfectly happy for us to handle. I think that generally the counties are trying to avoid that simply because if something goes wrong, it's going to be our fault. And really, it should be on the state level. People should be going to the website or going through the contact list. I believe I sent all you the contact phone numbers and the contact email. That was almost 2 weeks ago that I sent that out to you. So far, they've had less than 200 phone calls with questions from the entire state to that hotline. So I don't think the word has got spread out very well. The third question that may come up today is what about, when we're reopening, what about workers with risk factors, workers with respiratory issues or diabetes or having achieved exalted age like myself? How do we accommodate them? There was as of yesterday, and Chris and Sam can back me up on it, I think, but there was as of yesterday no direction on how to handle that either. It's kind of leaving it up to the employers to make reasonable accommodations. And I think the big question that all of us are going to receive is simply, am I included in phase one? I have a flower shop, am I included in phase one? Can I open? The way to find this out is to go to the New York Forward website, which I gave to you all, but it's pretty simple. It's forward.newyork.gov, and look yourself up. There's a really, and I hate giving a lot of plaudits to the state, but they've done a really fine job on this one. You can look up, your industry very easily. They're doing it by the NAICS number, NAICS, which is a business code for every sort of business. And you can get to it through the industry breakdowns to see the business resources you just went by, and punch in your number. If you don't know what your number is, you can look it up, very easily, and it'll tell you whether you're open or not. On this website, there's also a whole bunch of business plans, how to reopen your business, the sorts of plans and conditions you have to abide by. It's all pretty much there. There's not a whole lot that we should have to provide to anybody if they're willing to go through this. Now, one problem that I have is internet access for some of my businesses, but a lot of them are going down to, sit outside McDonald's to try and use the Wi-Fi, that sort of thing. I did get them to tell me yesterday that if a municipality wanted to proclaim their library to be an essential service, that was within our purview. We could do that and allow the libraries to open for, this purpose. I'm not sure whether I'm willing to exercise that or not, but essentially it looks like anything that any control we're willing to accept and take over, we might be allowed to do. I do not think our county is in a position of, like I say, giving out third-party opinions. I don't think we should be in the position of approving business plans or any other such things. And the final thing has to do with complaints. A lot of the town supervisors have already started getting a bunch of complaints about this business is open, these people aren't following the mask and the social distance rules and regulations, and how do we handle complaints? You saw when I distributed my comments on the draft plan, that I objected strongly to the idea of having local authorities doing that. That I thought it was state regulations, it should be the state police handling it. Maybe Sheriff Murphy or the DA can, weigh in on that a little bit. I think that Sheriff Murphy's been in contact with the state police. You there, Jeff?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I spoke with Major Teppo, and they're more than happy to help us with the complaints. We've had 16 to date. Most of them have been pretty simple, just responding and advising them of the complaint, and just kind of checking to see what they're doing, and then we complete a file on it. We only have one that's been a problem. And I was interested to see, Bob, that you had that site, and a business can put their number in, but is there a way for us to check to see if a business is listed?
You run through the same thing, Sheriff, just to figure out what their NICS code is and punch it in and it'll tell you.
Okay.
And there's a really good lookup if you're not sure, what their code is. There's a 4-step process you go through. Just type in what it is, and it'll ultimately tell you what the code is.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, Tony, did you have something to? Tony Jordan, did you have something you wanted to bring forward?
I think the only thing I would add is our local village police departments are getting, and I don't know whether they're coming through Tim Hardy's group or direct calls, but they're seeing an increase, and I think it's only going to become more so, probably similar to the complaints the supervisors are getting, which is people are gathering at homes or similar type conduct. And what we are trying to help our local law enforcement agencies deal with the customer service side of, some of this stuff is not prohibited by executive order. It's much like masks in public, right? I mean, there's a provision that says if you cannot maintain, then you should, but that's not a law enforcement issue to come out and enforce. So trying to help them navigate those waters. Across the state, Jeff and I were on a call last night, and similar problem with large and small counties and cities across the state is, okay, how do we push these back up to the Attorney General's office, and what's the point of contact? And I think the only commonality, other than trying to figure out how to do it, was no one really had a good answer. So we're still trying to figure that out.
Okay. I think that at this point in time, I would throw it open if people want to bring forth things that we think maybe legitimately this committee should be handling or working on. Hold forward. Do you want to go around the room, or you want to just bring it up as it comes? All right, start with Matt. Matt Hicks, you.
Well, I just expressed some of the questions I've been getting since the news was announced and everybody's ready to go. The questions I've been getting on, number one, can I just open as usual? If not, what are my requirements? What do I find out what my requirements are? How much leeway do I have in those requirements? Am I required to do, PPE? Am I required to put plexiglass? Have I got to do these things? Where are the requirements that I need to know? And what happens if I am short? What if I can do almost all of it, but I can't do quite all of it because of the restrictions I have, either financially or structurally? Am I going to get caught? And if I get reported, is there a fine? And who's the enforcement? Is there somebody going to be coming and telling me and then either enforcing it and shutting me down, or are they going to be there to help to say, here's where you're short and here's what you need to do? And I guess the last question is, I didn't look up my NIC code. I don't care. I don't know if I'm in the official list or not, but you know what? I determined that I manufacture, so I'm going to go back to work. And if the governor doesn't like it, he can go pound salt. These are just the questions I'm getting, Bob. I don't know where to go on any of these, and I'm just throwing that out there for discussion.
Okay, well, I think probably none of us know where to go with things like that, Matt. I keep, you know, everybody that I'm getting, I'm sending to this New York Forward, and I'm finding they're having great success with it. It's, you know, it gives them a plan, it gives them, you know, all the questions about PPE. There's a certification thing that they have to sign before they start back in business, and that is on there, and it's submitted right through the website. My biggest problem with that is not being able to have people figure out what to do from it, but being able to get on the internet enough to do it. But
Okay.
the website is really pretty inclusive. I'm quite surprised it is functioning so well.
Okay, so we just passed that information along to them and said, let them take it from there then.
I think that's our best approach at this point.
Okay.
Mr.
Bob?
Biddle. Yeah.
Most of you on this email should be on the chamber's email distribution list. If you're not, feel free to send me mbiddle@adirondackchamber.org that you need to be put on the list. We're putting out stuff at least 3 times a day, updating, because things are just changing so quickly. And it's tough because what that website will do and what the state will do is they'll throw something out there and the change is a little piece of the bigger pie and you're not sure what changed. We're on that. We're sending stuff out. Matt, I don't care if they're a member or a non-member. Feel free to send along. Feel free to have them call the chamber. We'll be more than happy to help them.
Next, Kathy, got anything? You're muted. Unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. In the report, I think it wasn't specific on, or maybe I missed it, on the level of staff. Can they be more than 50% or are they still at 50% for a while? Or does it depend on the business? Or do I go to the website?
I believe we're still on New York pause till what, the 28th? So I believe that would still leave us at 50%. Anybody disagree?
So Bob, this is Laura. On the website, you'll notice that one of the documents available on there is, it's a master guideline for basically the rules and commitments that you have to make. The last time that document was updated was the 13th. And on the 13th, it specifically says, at least for manufacturers, I'm assuming other businesses as well, that it's 50% of the occupancy of the building. That's not 50% of your employees. It's whatever your occupancy is for the building. You're not supposed to have more than 50% at a time. But that document with the last update was on the 13th.
Okay, thank you. Does that do it, Cass?
Yep.
Dina, got anything?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what Mike said, that we're here sending out updates to, our loan list of businesses, but it doesn't matter if you're somebody who has a loan with us or not. If there's anything that the LDC can help, we are absolutely here to help you figure out whatever you need to traverse these programs or to fill out these forms online. So, we're always available. So anybody can reach out and we're here to help. So.
And also, don't forget that hotline number that I gave you. Who's next in line? Dana Hogan, you got anything?
Yeah, Bob. So I had sent you some of those questions that had been popping up, kind of like what Matt's been experiencing, is that people are confused. They still don't know what category they're actually indicated in. The barbers and hairstylists still seems to be coming up. And as of this morning, I still don't see where they're clearly defined in any of the groupings. One of the other things that I did print off today, the reopening safety plan template, which was on that forward site. That's pretty good. I mean, it does identify what people need to do in order to be, I guess should say, the written safety plan outlining what they have to do in order to open. It does say it doesn't need to be provided to the state of New York, but it does have to be available in the event of a inspection of your business. I think people should probably look at that pretty closely because it does look like it's pretty thorough. The other one was I'm getting a lot of just the general questions, Bob. And I don't know if this is the right forum for it, but just strange questions, not strange, but just, different categories like gun ranges aren't allowed to be opened right now, even though hunting is allowed and golf courses are allowed. It's kind of confusing as to why that type of industry wouldn't be allowed to be open. One of the things, and I think Mr. Dexter's on the phone, and I was hoping maybe he could answer today. I'm getting a lot of asks for seeing if the school districts can open up their fields and their tracks now that outdoor activities are being allowed, particularly the tracks for walking and running. The other one I did get is I'm getting a lot of feedback about the county DMV. It would be helpful if we could increase the hours, I guess. I haven't spoke to Steph about this, and I probably should have. I don't know if she's on the call, but that's one of the ones where that's just seems to be holding a lot of people up right now for vehicle transfers, changes, things like that. I'm getting calls about that one, primarily probably because of the industry I'm in. But I do get a lot of phone calls about DMV hours and the time required to get paperwork back in order for people to drive vehicles right away. And I think the other thing that I communicated to you in that email, it was an interesting question. One of the business owners in our community had indicated, and kind of what Matt was saying is a potential health department inspection. We want to ensure that they're educational as opposed to punitive. So in the event somebody does make an error just based on the sheer volume of information that's out there, and it's a genuine error. We had a barber indicate that one of the things that they're having trouble dealing with is the supply chain management, because one of the things he's hearing is that gowns need to be disposable. Barbicide needs to be changed out more frequently. And due to limitations in supply chain management, he's going to have a hard time meeting those expectations. So the idea is that they're hoping this can be communicated to the state level, that these can be educational visits as opposed to punitive visits. So that's what I got.
All right, that is something that we brought up in our regional control group, very specifically, that they should be, assistance as opposed to enforcement here, especially at the beginning. Barbershops and beauty salons are phase 2. We've tried to get that changed, and so far they haven't. But okay. It was still phase 2 as of yesterday. It was one of the questions that I brought up to them. DMV, Chris, were you going to take a comment on that?
Yeah, so Mr. Hogan, to your point, the clerk has heard the same thing that you have. She and I spoke this morning, and she has 2 different proposals that she would like to bring forward at government operations tomorrow to get the approval to increase her staffing. There was actually a little bit of confusion among the County Clerks Association late this weekend, early this week, about some existing executive order language that was out there, because the existing executive order, I believe it's 202.8, the language says that effective such and such a date, and now through June 13th, all in-person appointments at DMV are hereby canceled. And then the following language says that only online transactions shall be permitted. But the Clerks Association worked hard over the weekend and got some clarity for us early yesterday that the intent of that executive order really was to limit the public or exclude the public from coming into DMV offices. So it does appear that we're okay continuing to operate the way we are with the Dropbox and processing dealer work. And as I said, the clerk is going to bring forward a couple proposals tomorrow to increase her capacity there.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
You want me to talk about the school grounds? So I know that's a question that's been coming up. We have about 3 days a week, I meet with all the superintendents, the 31 superintendents in the region. And we did have yesterday quite a few folks from the various county health departments and emergency services personnel, and the question came up. And obviously, it ultimately becomes a local district decision, but the general consensus, the overwhelming general consensus at that point in time was the feeling that schools can't monitor what's happening. And at this point in time, they recommended that we don't open up the facilities. But we know it's going to be a continuous question. I think the question is, what is our ability to kind of make sure people are following the norms that are expected out there? And we don't have a good answer for that. So at this point in time, they suggested we don't move on that, because once we do, it's going to be hard to control. I know there's a lot of teams that are calling Little League and other teams, can we get out in the fields and do that? And it's hard to figure out exactly where those lines are going to be. But I know things like in some districts like tennis and other things people have asked, do I think schools, if they see somebody out in tennis court, are necessarily going to stop and, call the police or anything? No. But I think the problem is once you start opening them up, you're going to start seeing softball teams and baseball teams and that kind of thing. And that's going to be the hard part to manage. Hope I answered that, but that's the honest answer we had as of yesterday.
You did. Thank you.
I'm kind of going around the circle as it appears on my board, so don't read any priority into how I'm calling people here. Mike, you got a comment on that?
Yeah, for Supervisor Hogan, your classmate, Wendy Biddle, is tired of me shooting on the side of our yard. So I've been working with Dan Steck and Betty Little and Kerry Warner to get the gun clubs back open. It's a priority for Assemblyman Steck. I think it's going to be closer than we think. I certainly can't promise anything. As you all know, can't promise anything out of Albany, but I'm hoping in the next week or so, we're going to see the governor come out with something and let us open that up.
Yeah, they were talking about some different things depending on what sort of facilities you had, whether you had indoor facilities or outdoor facilities, and this sort of stuff. So every club's a little bit different. Mr. Dexter, do you have anything else that you wanted to bring to our attention today?
The only thing I'll add is, so we do have planning committees going on already for the fall. We have of our superintendent groups, 7 different groups on trying to figure out how we will manage at some point going back to school, whenever that is. We're hoping sooner than later. And we want to be prepared for whatever hits us. But there is a state education department committee, and there's other groups as well who have a vested interest in this. So it's a little complicated. I will say that, we'll work through it. Most of our summer programs, we traditionally run summer programs for children who are with disabilities. Those are going to run most likely online. We do regional summer school for students who have either failed a Regents exam or failed a class. Because the state got rid of the Regents exams for this year, that's going to be a fairly small population, but we will have some programs. Those will run virtually, and we will have some catch up. Some districts are already planning on some programs to catch children up who they know who are just not keeping up, even though they may pass the class, we're not keeping up with the curriculum. So I think you'll see a lot of that will be virtual as well. The other thing is the meal programs that we are running are slated to end at when school ends, because that's part of the executive order. We have to provide the meal programs, and I know there's some concern about that. But right now, with the funding we have, the meal programs are scheduled to end. The other thing is our childcare program, which has gone very well. We decided to do it regionally. We have 3 sites: the Southern Adirondack Educational Center in Washington County. Then we have the Sanford Street Teaching Learning Center in Warren County, and the Myers Center in Saratoga County. That program is also slated to end, but we've been in conversations with the Y, and we're hoping that they'll be able to take over those programs because we know how essential they are. So I think that's my update at this point, unless there are any questions.
Okay, Mr. O'Brien.
So I agree the website is fairly well put together for the length of time they had to generate it. As I started reading through this handout you sent out to read up the plan, in the first few pages, it talks about coordinating with the businesses, contacting businesses, mailing them information, getting information. They sign up on the website for the portal. They'll be followed up with after 30 days. They'll be looked at to figure out if they've done things and updated their unique safety plans. Who's going to be responsible for, number one, the cost of all this? And number two, actually perform the direct outreach campaigns that it calls for in this? The direct outreach campaign means either, to me, either mailing, emailing, in person. But who's going to coordinate and do all this activities? That really is, as I sort of said last night, it take 500 people to do this, but there is a lot of work to do a lot of these reaching out to people. And I think that needs to be clarified.
It certainly does, and as of right now, to the best of my knowledge, there is no clarity. None of these things were intended to be a local government function, but some of the counties have essentially taken it over and said, yes, we're going to do it. Others have not. So I don't think that we're in a position at this point to put that kind of time and effort, staff time into it, unless one of you is volunteering.
I think IDA and Regional Planning Board would be good at it.
Yeah, the IDA and Regional Planning Board would be perfect for doing that. I do think that then one thing I wanted to end up with when we get all done, I wanted to talk about some way of getting the word out, how we're publicizing this. I know that Mike is doing a pretty good mailing to a lot of people. Perhaps we need some, something on the county website, something on, other places we can put out. I'm not, not specifically sure how, we ought to be publicizing this, but, people have got to find out even that things are open. But yes, you're right. There was a couple of things in there about creating comprehensive lists and mailing things out. I don't think that we've got, the ability within this county, county government to do it. We've all got a little piece of it. Dina's got a list of businesses, and Mike's certainly got a list of businesses, and Laura's got a list of businesses, and we've all got an idea in our towns who's there. I think maybe this could be kind of a joint venture doing this, but I don't know that I have an answer for that, so perhaps somebody else does.
Well, in consideration of this, there are a lot of small businesses that don't have access to computers. Some really don't have time to get on the computer and ferret through all this stuff, or the knowledge to do it. And I think there's going to be a big sector of people, especially in home businesses and small businesses spread out through our counties, that really aren't going to get the tools they need to be successful in navigating through this.
Okay, I don't know if I've got a way to answer that. I think that, I thought it was fairly well done, but that's me, I guess. Okay, Laura?
Just a couple of comments. I started doing some direct outreach to some of our larger employers, just trying to understand what they might need help with, where they are, et cetera. So one of the comments that I got back from Fort Miller, who, as you probably know, is our largest employer, they were very grateful to public safety for providing them a number of masks, et cetera, but they have some concerns. They did not furlough any of their employees. They were deemed an essential business, so they've been at least partially running. However, as they start to scale up, they do have some concerns about having sufficient PPE equipment. So their question, for example, is how widely available are these supplies going to be? Again, we help them to a certain extent, but if we have a non-business opening at the same time, there's going to be, more demand for this.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of statements over the past several weeks about warehouses and storehouses and who should have how much stuff. And that's another misconception. I think that the county should be the warehouse for this sort of thing. I don't think that they've got the supplies to take care of large businesses. I'm not sure they do on the state level either, although that would be the next place I'd ask if they run out. I can ask that question.
Yeah, again, that's come up a couple of times. I've heard from a number of our large employers that their overwhelming largest concern is the safety of their employees. And irrespective of what they're allowed to do, there's significant concern that if they can't provide a safe environment, they don't want people coming back to work. And I've heard that from a few of them. The other thing I want to address is Dave's comment about lists and contacting businesses. I completely agree. We do not have the ability right now to do direct outreach to every employer in the county. Certainly we could directly contact the largest ones. Deanna has lists of businesses that have worked with the LDC over the years. We also have a lot of businesses through the tourism Facebook list. But because by and large, we consist of small businesses, trying to keep track of hundreds of business, that list changes so constantly, it's not possible to keep up with. So we could do a great deal of outreach, but we don't have the capacity to directly outreach every business in the county.
Absolutely agreed. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. No, a lot of great comments. I think everybody kind of hit on this. It's kind of like the hand grenade I dropped at the meeting we had last week. The cost to legislate, the cost to enforce. The plan briefs well. I mean, and most people are going to do their best to meet the elements outlined in this reopen plan. And I'm not, and it is good to your point, Bob, it is a well-written document. The challenge will come down to the cost. So not only cost to the taxpayer with the governance of it, it's also the small and medium businesses. I can just tell you that from my perspective, working with one of the larger businesses, we have already spent thousands upon thousands of dollars creating the framework by which, because we were deemed essential, we ended up creating the framework. We put together a prevention team and did a lot of this stuff, and it was very expensive. And the cost to maintain it or sustain the PPE, this is $1 a copy right now, $1 per.
Yep.
And hand sanitizer, we've got lots of kiosks up around the mill, self-serve kiosks with masks and gloves and hand sanitizer, and we cannot keep the hand sanitizer stocked. Cleaning supplies, just to give you an example, they're in high demand and they're back ordered. So our current suppliers with all the kinds of things you need to meet the deep clean sanitation kind of things that you hope everybody's doing. So my point is businesses are going to get stressed and they're going to have to make choices as to whether or not they comply to the letter or they stay open. And that's going to be a tough one, particularly with some of the businesses we want to keep open. So I don't know that, I don't have the answer to that. I just know we're going to be walking a tightrope for a while. One, eliminate the confusion to get there, and two, sustain it. Thanks.
Absolutely correct. Rebecca.
Not too much on my end. The biggest thing that we've heard is the internet aspect. I do think the website is really great. We actually used it to do a safety plan for us. You know, we walked it along. It was pretty easy to follow and you know, didn't force us to think on some topics maybe we wouldn't have come on our own. But the internet thing is pretty serious. This website has a lot of, you know, gadgets to it that it's great. It makes it really easy to use if you have high-speed internet, but if you don't, what are you supposed to do? And the only other comment I would make, like mentioned golf courses, you know, they were deemed essential on Sunday, I believe, or Saturday. And for them, you know, it's a line. It just says 13 golf courses can open, but it doesn't go into, well, what does that mean? Can I have golf carts? Can my pro shop be open? What does all that look like? And that's not on the website yet. So hopefully, you know, it's changing so fast. Hopefully we'll see some of the things for that so they can get some clarification, because I think people do want to follow the rules, but it's getting to the point where if they can't access it or they just don't know, you know, again, we mentioned the health department being a visitor and not just there to fine. So I think the internet thing isn't going away anytime soon, unfortunately.
No, it's certainly not. And the fact that the governor thinks that Washington County is completely served with high-speed internet isn't a real help.
No.
Agreed.
I've brought it up every meeting we've been in, and it hasn't seemed to register yet.
I
Mr. Nolet,
I can't do this one. I can't do this from my house, by the way. I'm on satellite. And It's not, I can't go video from the house.
Exactly. Al, did you have something you wanted to weigh in on?
A question. I know that we're getting into the season where a lot of our not-for-profits and community groups look forward to some of their fundraising events, their chicken barbecues and what have you. Where do they fall in the reopening? That'll be some of the questions that I get in my near future.
And that was a question we asked yesterday and did not get an answer to it. Maybe we'll hear back today, but there's a whole range of not-for-profits and whether they're going to, you know, apply or not. I don't think we've got a really decent answer on yet. Maybe today I'll get back to you and I'll bring it up again.
If you've ever had the chicken barbecue from Argyle Fire Department, that's essential. There's no question that's essential.
It's unequivocally essential. Although I'd hate to talk about Hartford, but Hartford Fish and Game does a pretty good one too. Chris, did you have?
I was just going to say to that point, I think there's two different issues there, and I think the point that you were trying to make, Bob, was that we don't know when the nonprofits are going to be able to return to normal operation. I think the treasurer's question was more about your events or fundraisers.
Yes, sir.
At least, and I'm looking at Tim on this one. I think with the extensions that were issued last week through June 13th, there's still not supposed to be any unnecessary social gathering. Or is that only through May 28th?
May 28th as of right now.
So through May 28th, all non-essential gatherings of any size are, let's say, frowned upon by the executive order. So, you know, to Bob's example, because I happen to be partial to the Hartford Fish and Game chicken barbecue, they usually do those takeouts. There's probably a way you could make that work.
That's what I was hoping.
There's something like the alfresco dinner. I don't see how you make that happen.
Yeah, if everything could be boxed in a to-go basis where you just pulled up in your car, you got your meal and you left, we're kind of hoping that something like that might be okay.
Okay, we'll bring it up again today. Patty Hunt's on there. Patty, you got anything for us? You there, Patty?
No, we're just monitoring the infection rate, count, things like that as things loosen up a little bit. We are concerned that as things open up, our job of quarantining is going to be more difficult, but yet to be seen.
Okay, I think it probably is going to generate a lot more workload for you.
Because I'm next to you on the left?
Yeah.
All right. So from our aspect, certainly we're encouraging any calls that we get to go to the forwardnewyork.gov and fill out the safety plan. I know I've talked to a couple of local organizations that are planning events in the future, nowhere close to now, at least a month out. And just really we're advising them we have no idea what this is going to look like as the executive orders continue to change, whether they're renewed or not. And as far as PPE goes, our priority obviously is healthcare and first responders at the Emergency Management Office. But we have really taken an uptick in getting our municipal operations back open, whether it's our town and village courts, county operations, those kind of things. So we're trying to make sure that we have enough PPE so we can get municipal operations back open safely. So as far as like businesses reaching out for masks, the cloth masks, yes, we tried to get cloth masks to every essential business who needed them and every citizen who's looking for them. There are some limitations to those. They have a 15 wash span for each mask. They come in the packages of 5, and we didn't separate them out any less than that, so each person was getting at least 5. You can wash them, 15 times. Gotcha. Hand sanitizer is the one thing we do have a lot of. So if we do have an essential business who needs some hand sanitizer, we can get some of that to them. All they have to do is reach out to our office, and we'll do whatever we can to help. Certainly our goal is, just like Patty, we want to make sure that everybody does this and does it safely. And anything resource-wise, if somebody needs something, we can certainly get them in the right place. In regards to the New York on pause complaints, yes, we have seen an uptick in those as of late. We're starting to take plenty of calls of gatherings in yards or other places like that, and we are either shifting them off to a patrol supervisor or to, if it's in a village, to the officer on duty to figure out what the situation is. And obviously, certainly if it's something they're talking about a business or something being planned, we're again referring them to the forwardnewyork.gov website.
Okay. Like I said at the beginning, I think I see the function of this group as funneling, questions and things that aren't handled well by the information that's on the website, this sort of thing, back to the state to get answers on. Is there anything here that we haven't covered, haven't touched yet?
Bob?
Mike's leaning in. You got. I see
Bob,
you leaning in, Mike.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Number one, liability. One of the largest things that I hear from our employers is they don't want to be saddled with the liability should somebody sue them for being sick. It's tough to prove if they got sick at that place with a customer, a guest, or even an employee. But certainly our businesses already have enough challenges. And if they're adhering and exceeding all the state mandates, I really hope that they don't get hit with any liability challenges for somebody being sick. I really like what Supervisor Hogan said. Another big one that we have, all of us on this call that have had experiences with state agencies and federal agencies, they generally come in and tell you what you've done wrong and fine you. We need them to come in and say what we've done wrong, and this is how you fix it, and I'll be back next week. We'd really like that. I really like that the business is going to be able to go on a website, newyorkforward.gov. Once they commit to reading the guidance, they'll be able to download a sign that they're going to be able to put in their business that said that they've read and filled out the business template, the business safety template, so they can put it right on their place of business for customers and everyone else to see. Someone else brought up businesses are struggling to get PPE. That is a major problem. I hope that we don't whack businesses because they're thin on PPE. We still have to figure out ways to get these businesses open and get our economy going. As far as the tracing system goes, Mr. Hardy, thank you so much for your daily updates. I hope that we can keep the great privacy standards that you've set going as we go forward in case there are more illnesses. And if you look in the, Bob, if you look in the Capital Region Forward plan that you sent, there's the tracing system, but it doesn't really focus on the continued need for privacy standards. So hopefully we can bring that up. Isolation facilities for those that are sick that can't quarantine safely. Who pays for that? I know our county puts a big cost on a lot of this stuff, but that's a question that I had. When a protect high risk employees, it just gives a general statement. Higher risk employees whose work cannot be done remotely should be considered for temporary work on and on. We really need, the businesses need a doctor's note That's not in the plan here. Bob, do you know what I'm talking about on the expectations of all employers? Okay,
Yep.
we need a doctor's note from the employee. One of the things I could offer that we just put an email out minutes ago to everybody on the call, when a business calls and says, what do I do? We have a 5-step plan for all our employers. It doesn't matter where you're coming from or what phase you're in, but develop plans and procedures. So fill out the business reopening safety plan template that's several people have referenced that on this call. Second, have a person in charge. When somebody from DOH or an agency comes in, they're going to ask 2 things: who's in charge and where's your paperwork? Which is number 3 is employees should all receive a copy of the plan and sign off that they've read it, the plan, and agree to implement it. 4 is have logbooks available for staff to fill out, because these plans and procedures require sanitation at certain times. Just have any business have a logbook that shows you did it, initial it, timestamp it. That way, if somebody comes in from DOH, the burden of proof isn't on the business, it's on DOH. And 5, have signs at your place of business saying that, outlining what the safety expectations are for employees and for guests. I kind of had that on all employers are expected to. And Bob, you'll get that email, and everyone on the call that's on our email list should have that soon. I'm almost done.
Sure you are.
Thanks, Dana.
Isn't it?
Compliance, and I think Supervisor Hogan hit this first. Just contact the business first. Most businesses are trying so hard. They're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. I'm not so sure that with the limited resources that we have for enforcement, and especially since we're chasing criminals that the governor keeps letting out, that we don't need to put more on Sheriff Murphy and Tony Jordan's plate. Just to have somebody from the county reach out to the business that might have a compliance issue, they will do their best to try and fix it. And lastly, what we're hearing from our employers and our employees, when we can, let's go back to school. Mr. Dexter, you and I haven't had a chance to catch up lately, but kids need social interaction. I'm glad that the governor's looking at trying to do some things differently, but don't take away the good stuff. And I would share with you that social interaction is at the top of the list, right there equating with learning. So that's what I have, Mr. Hankey. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Hogan.
Hey, Bob, so in one of the emails you had sent out, you had talked about the unique features of Washington County, and it seems like the big one we've talked about today is internet access. So if this move forward document is only accessible using internet, I would like to know if perhaps we can have a goal to figure out a way to get this communication and these kind of documents out to folks who don't necessarily have internet access, or if they did, they wouldn't even I guess have the wherewithal to move forward and looking in that location. So I guess what I'm hoping before we meet again, if we could have some kind of plan in place to get the communication out either via regular US mail, or whatever form of communication we need to, I'm thinking just here in Kingsbury, I'm thinking of a couple businesses off the top of my head. I know they don't use internet, but I know they need this kind of information if they're going to attempt to comply with the reopening. So I guess I'd ask.
Yeah, and I can think of 2 or 3 right off the top of my head in Argyle too. And the problem is, and I brought this up 2 or 3 times, I think that was in some of my comments on the original draft, is that the only way to get it back into the state is through the internet portal. So, I've actually had somebody come down to the town hall and we did it. But, it's, you're right, it's a huge problem. I keep bringing it up. I'm not sure what the solution is, but, I'll keep trying to, to to get them to accept things in some other manner. Because you're absolutely right. I think that's one of my biggest comments on the draft was the internet issue. We are not 100% served.
And I don't know what else, maybe other people have other thoughts on what's unique to us in Washington County. There must be others. So I guess if those are moved forward, I'm hoping that would be a good step in the right direction as well.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
One of the things that the schools have done, especially in Granville and Whitehall and other areas that have limited internet access, was they set up points for people to go in and access the internet. I don't know, Jim, if you know if they still have those in effect, if they would allow people from business people go in to use their computers there to get access to high-speed internet. That
You
might be
mean,
something we could get a message out to people.
In the buildings themselves?
I think they're outside. I mean,
Yeah.
I established 2 places in Hampton, one at the town hall and one at the firehouse, where people could sit outside and access the internet and get their work done or their school work done. But I know Granville had some other places identified. I think in North Granville, I saw that some other schools were doing it also. Maybe if you can gather up a list of those and they can continue those through the summer or at least to the end of the school year.
I think we are going to. I think we plan on continuing. And I know originally some of the schools, so we had some conversations with Chris Duffy. And of course, there were some college students who also were having some issues getting their work done. So we agreed where we could to light up those. So we did a call. I know some of the districts were trying not to overtly advertise it because they were a little concerned about who might show up and get on an open internet, that there were some concerns about that because it's open and anyone can access it. But I do know most of the districts, if they could, they lit it up, and depends on what infrastructure they had. Some couldn't go out any farther, depends on where their WAPs were, and some could. I can talk to them about putting a list together. I think there's going to be some concern about publicly advertising that though, because they just don't know who's going to show up. But I know the college students were given information on where they could go. So let me follow up on that. But I kind of see both sides of that equation.
No, some of the school districts published it right on Facebook. So
yeah, some did, some didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I think locally we've all done some of that stuff. I've got a couple in Argyle that we've set up, but it's certainly not a need we've satisfied yet. Anybody else? Mr. Hogan.
Hey, Bob, just back to that point, it's similar to, I feel like it's similar at times to people who still use paper documents to file their taxes. And I know the library is usually a good source for that as well. If something could be printed, we could always distribute them at a town hall or at least make them available to people in the event.
Yep.
That's why I guess if the state would be willing to print something like that formally, perhaps that would be a reason to have the libraries at least open with limited hours, or but the town hall as well. So.
Anybody else? Ms. Bedler.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
The governor's on there talking every day and having his meetings, and so are all of his commercials that change on a daily basis. I think they could put a tagline in the end of that about going to the New York forward.gov. Now, maybe they do now because I don't see TV that much, but that could be another place. They're already online. They're already on TV. They could put a tagline in there, recommend businesses refer to those websites.
Okay. I'll mention that also.
So Bob, can I make one quick comment?
Yep.
So I just have a very interesting statistic for you. Obviously, as New York is on pause, businesses are closed, tourism is discouraged because you don't want people moving from place to place. A lot of areas that see influx of vacation rentals across the nation actually shut those abilities down. I think you will find it interesting that we just checked the Airbnb stats for the county. For the month of April, the number of days rented more than doubled from a year ago last April. So what that says is that people who have been, furloughed while we're on pause, we've probably got a lot of influx of people in the county renting those Airbnb rooms. So through the tourism website, we are trying to update every few days information about what businesses have remained open, where they're doing curbside pickup or whatever it might be. There are actually businesses in the county that have done extremely well. Food, for example, Locust Grove, some of the other businesses where people don't want to congregate in grocery stores. If they can get out and get food, they're doing it. So there have actually been some businesses in the county that have seen an uptick from this crisis. And I'd obviously like to hope that that continues. That was it.
Thank you, Laura. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, what I'd like to do going forward is when things come up, specific things, get them to me. When we get a list of things I think that we have to address as a group, we'll call another meeting. You guys are going to have to be fairly flexible on this, because I think that, meeting once a week or something like that probably wouldn't be very effective. We may have stuff to talk about, may not. So communicate back to me. I consider this less of a committee than a working group, so we're kind of all in charge. So communicate back. I'll coordinate the questions back and forth to people, and when I get some answers on some of this stuff, I'll post that out on email. Anything else before we get done here? Okay, we're done. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, everyone.